The Vane estate blazed against the winter darkness like a fortress of blood and gold. Inside the grand dining hall, crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across men in tailored suits, crime lords discussing territories over aged whiskey and cold negotiations. Elara Vance moved through the shadows between courses, a ghost in crimson, her presence so practiced at invisibility that even the most dangerous men in the city forgot she existed. Until Bastian Vane's eyes found her. They always found her. 9 o'clock. His whiskey. Every night for 6 months, the same ritual. She'd appear at his shoulder with the glass. He'd nod without looking. She'd disappear back into the walls. Tonight, 9 o'clock came and went. The glass sat untouched on her tray in the kitchen. Because Elara wasn't there. Where is she? Bastian's voice cut through the dinner conversation like a blade. His head steward, a weasel of a man named Marcus, paled. She was disciplined, sir. For insubordination. Sent outside to reconsider her attitude. Outside. Where the blizzard had been raging for 2 hours. Where the temperature had dropped to 15 below zero. Bastian's hand stilled on his glass. Around the table, rival bosses watched with predatory interest as the infamous Vane, the man who'd built an empire on ice-cold control, stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. Security footage took 30 seconds to pull up. 20 seconds to watch Elara dragged to the servants' entrance. 10 seconds to see her thrown into the storm in nothing but her thin uniform dress, the door locked behind her. Bastian's rage was a living thing, silent, absolute, and lethal. He walked out of his own dinner party without a word, leaving stunned crime lords and unanswered negotiations behind. Because somewhere in that frozen hell, the woman who smiled at him like he was human instead of monster was dying. And whoever put her there had just made the last mistake of their very short life. If you're already hooked by Bastian and Elara's dangerous romance, do me a favor, hit that like button right now. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And if you love dark romance with tattooed mafia bosses and fierce heroines, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. The wind hit Bastian like a fist the moment he stepped outside. Snow swirled in violent eddies, reducing visibility to mere feet, but he didn't slow. Behind him, Dante Graves materialized from the security office, already pulling on a tactical coat. Boss, you can't. Find her. Bastian's voice was barely audible over the howling storm, but the command was absolute. Now. They split without another word. Bastian moved with lethal purpose through drifts that reached his knees, his dress shirt already soaked through, freezing against his skin. He didn't feel it. Couldn't feel anything except the cold fury burning through his chest and the single thought pounding with his heartbeat. Find her. Find her. Find her. The servants' entrance was on the east side. He calculated distances, wind direction, where someone disoriented and freezing would try to go. The main gate was too far. The garden wall closer, offering some shelter from the wind. His boots crunched through ice-crusted snow. The estate stretched before him like a winter graveyard, beautiful and deadly. Then he saw it, a splash of crimson against endless white, barely visible through the storm. His heart stopped. Elara was slumped against the garden wall, half buried in snow. Her red uniform dress clung to her body like a second skin of ice. Her hair, usually pinned back neat and professional, had come loose and frozen in dark ribbons across her face. Her lips were blue. Her skin was gray. Bastian dropped to his knees beside her, hands already moving to check for a pulse. There, faint, too faint, barely a flutter against his fingers. Relief and rage crashed through him in equal measure. Elara. He gripped her shoulders, shaking gently. Nothing. He shook harder. Elara, open your eyes. Now. Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Bastian didn't wait. He scooped her into his arms. She weighed nothing, absolutely nothing, and stood. Her head lolled against his chest, and something in him cracked wide open. This small, fragile woman who served his whiskey with steady hands and smiled at him like he deserved kindness, someone had thrown her away like garbage. Dante. His roar cut through the storm. His second-in-command appeared within seconds, took one look at Alara's unconscious form, and paled. Jesus Christ. Get Lowry. Now. Bastion was already moving toward the house, cradling Alara against his chest, trying to share what little warmth his body could offer. And find Marcus. I want him in the courtyard in 10 minutes. The walk back felt endless. Snow continued to fall, covering them both, but Bastion barely noticed. His focus had narrowed to the woman in his arms, her shallow breathing, her frozen skin, the way her body had gone limp with hypothermia. She'd been out here for over an hour. Alone. Dying. Mine, something savage whispered in his chest. She's mine. The dining hall doors burst open. Bastion strode through, dripping melted snow across marble floors, still wearing his soaked dress shirt and suspenders, Alara's limp body cradled in his tattooed arms. The rival bosses at his table went silent. Lazzaro Moretti's eyes narrowed with interest. Solomon Cross leaned back, calculating. Bastion ignored them all. Clear the table in the library. Inez, blankets, all of them. Dante, where's Lowry? 2 minutes out. The household erupted into controlled chaos. Staff scattered to follow orders. Bastion laid Alara on the cleared library table as gently as he could, brushing frozen hair from her face. Her eyes remained closed. Her breathing was barely visible. Dr. Eris Lowry rushed in, medical bag already open. He took one look at Alara and swore. Get those wet clothes off her. We need to warm her gradually or her heart will stop. Bastion's hands moved to the buttons of her dress, but Lowry stopped him. Let Inez handle it. I need you to tell me. He pressed his stethoscope to Alara's chest, counting, his expression growing grimmer. Another 15 minutes, and we'd have lost her. He looked up at Bastion, and something in his old friend's eyes was accusing. What the hell happened? Bastion's jaw flexed. Behind him, he could hear the rival bosses gathering in the doorway, drawn by the spectacle of the infamous Bastion Vane, the man who felt nothing, standing over a dying maid with murder written across his face. Someone, Bastion said quietly, each word dripping venom, made a very serious mistake. Alara woke to firelight and the feeling of being watched. Her body ached with the deep, bone-level cold that comes after hypothermia, but she was warm now, wrapped in blankets soft enough to be sinful, lying in a bed far too large and luxurious to be the servants' quarters. The ceiling above her wasn't the water-stained plaster she'd stared at for 6 months. This was crown molding, elegant, and expensive. She turned her head slowly. Bastion Vane sat in a leather chair pulled close to the bedside, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, watching her with an intensity that should have terrified her. His white shirt was wrinkled, sleeves rolled up to reveal the tattoos that marked him as dangerous, a road map of violence written on skin. His dark hair was disheveled. He looked like he hadn't moved in hours. You're awake. His voice was rough, like he'd been shouting. Or hadn't spoken in too long. Alara's throat was dry. Where? My private suite. He stood abruptly, poured water from a crystal carafe on the nightstand, and held the glass to her lips with surprising gentleness. Drink slowly. She obeyed, too disoriented to do otherwise. The water was cool, perfect. When she'd had enough, he set the glass aside and sat back down, that predatory focus never leaving her face. What happened? She whispered. Marcus locked you outside in a blizzard. Bastion's jaw flexed. You were out there for an hour and 7 minutes. Another 15 and Dr. Lowry says your heart would have stopped. Memory crashed back, Marcus's fury over spilled wine, his hands gripping her arms, the door slamming, the cold. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble during your dinner. You're apologizing? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. For nearly dying? Before she could answer, the door opened. Inez Solari, the head housekeeper, entered with fresh blankets and a knowing smile that softened when she saw Alara awake. There you are, sweetheart. We were worried. Inez. Bastian's tone held warning. She needs rest. She needs soup and someone who won't hover like a gargoyle. Inez set down her supplies and shooed him toward the door. Out. Let the girl breathe. For a moment, Alara thought he'd refuse. His eyes held hers, something unreadable passing between them. Then he stood, buttoned his cuffs with sharp, precise movements, and walked to the door. He paused at the threshold. I'll be back. It sounded like a promise. Or a threat. Maybe both. After he left, Inez settled into the chair he'd vacated, her weathered hands smoothing Alara's blankets. That man hasn't left your side since Dr. Lowry stabilized you. 12 hours, refusing food, refusing sleep, refusing to attend to business that cost him thousands. She tilted her head, studying Alara. In 10 years of working for Bastian Vane, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. I don't understand. Be careful, girl. Inez's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That kind of attention from a man like him is dangerous. Before Alara could respond, raised voices echoed from somewhere below. Bastian's, cold and absolute. Then a single gunshot cracked through the winter air. Inez didn't flinch. She just sighed and patted Alara's hand. That would be Marcus receiving his severance package. Alara's blood went cold. He killed him. Bastian Vane doesn't tolerate threats to what's his. Inez stood, smoothing her apron. And apparently, sweetheart, you're his now. Whether that's blessing or curse, only time will tell. An hour later, Bastian returned. His knuckles were bruised. There was blood, not his, spattered across his collar. He looked at Alara with eyes that held winter and violence and something almost tender. Why would you care? She asked, voice barely audible. About a maid? He crossed to her bedside, reached out, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You're not just a maid anymore, Alara. His voice was soft, but the possessiveness underneath was absolute. The entire household knows it now. You're under my direct protection. Anyone who touches you dies. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her temple. And that includes anyone who tries to take you from me. Even you. The main wing was a different world. Alara's new quarters, directly across from Bastian's private rooms, were larger than anywhere she'd lived in the 8 years since her family died. Persian rugs, a 4-poster bed, windows overlooking the snow-covered gardens where she'd nearly frozen. Every morning she woke disoriented, expecting cramped servants' quarters and Marcus's shouting. Instead, she found silk sheets and silence broken only by Bastian's footsteps in the hall. Her new role as his personal assistant meant proximity that felt dangerous. Every morning at 7, she brought coffee to his study, Ethiopian blend, black, exactly how he preferred. He'd look up from whatever violence he was orchestrating, and for just a moment, something softened in those ice-cold eyes. Schedule for today? She learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw flexed when deals went wrong. Conference call with the shipping contractors at 9. Lunch meeting with Solomon Cross. Evening free, but Dante requested time to brief you on the Moretti situation. Cancel lunch. Move the shipping call to 10. He stood, rolling his shoulders, and she caught sight of the tattoo on his forearm, a date, rendered in Roman numerals. The day his father died. I need to handle something first. These glimpses into his world should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself fascinated by the man who could order executions before breakfast and then ask if she'd eaten lunch with genuine concern. 3 weeks into her new position, he found her in the library after midnight, surrounded by old newspapers she'd pulled from archives. The Vance family massacre, her family, spread across yellowed pages. 8 people dead. 1 14-year-old survivor. I didn't know you were a Vance. His voice came from the doorway, making her jump. He moved into the room with that predatory grace, eyes scanning the articles. I was 19 when that happened. I remember my father going to help negotiate a truce. His expression darkened. He was killed 3 days before he could prevent it. Ilara's breath caught. Your father tried to save them? He tried to save a lot of people. Bastian sat in the chair across from her, something raw in his face. He believed in rules, honor among thieves, protecting civilians from gang wars. That idealism got him shot in front of me when I was 17. They made me watch. Then they gave me a choice, take over or die with him. You were just a child. I was a killer by morning. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I executed every man who'd been in that warehouse. Then I took my father's empire and remade it in blood. I stopped believing in honor. Stopped believing in anything except power and control. His eyes found hers. Until you. The air between them felt charged. Ilara's heart hammered. Why me? Because you smile at monsters and serve them whiskey without trembling. Because you've survived hell and came out kind anyway. Because he stopped, jaw clenching. Because proximity to me gets people killed, and I can't seem to stay away from you. The confession hung between them. Ilara reached out slowly, her hand covering his scarred knuckles. He stared at the contact like it was something alien. Your father tried to save my family, she whispered. And you saved me. Maybe our tragedies were always meant to connect. Bastian's hand turned, fingers threading through hers. The touch was electric. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pulled back, standing abruptly. It's late. You should sleep. But he paused at the door, looking back with hunger and restraint warring in his expression. Ilara, lock your door tonight. Why? Because I'm not sure I trust myself to stay in my room knowing you're across the hall. 2 nights later, Ilara found herself staring at old family photos Inez had discovered in storage. Her mother's smile. Her father's laugh. Her younger brother who'd loved dinosaurs and never got to grow up. The grief came sudden and overwhelming, 8 years of carefully controlled emotion crashing through her defenses. She didn't hear Bastian enter. Suddenly he was there, pulling her from the chair into his arms, holding her while she broke apart. His tattooed arms wrapped around her like armor. His hand cradled the back of her head. I've got you, he murmured against her hair. I've got you. She cried into his chest, soaking his expensive shirt, and he just held her. When she finally quieted, exhausted, he lifted her easily and carried her to her room. Laid her on the bed. Covered her with blankets. Sat in the chair beside her until she fell asleep. The next morning, Inez found her in the kitchen. That man is falling for you, sweetheart. And he doesn't even know how. Ilara touched her lips, remembering the almost kiss in the library. Is that good or bad? With Bastian vain? Inez smiled sadly. It's everything. Dante Graves appeared in Bastian's study at dawn, his expression grim. We've got a problem. Bastian looked up from the contracts he'd been reviewing, instantly alert. Talk. 3 separate surveillance teams picked up activity around the perimeter over the past week. Professional work, thermal imaging, shift pattern analysis, architectural surveys. Dante dropped a tablet on the desk showing grainy photos of men with expensive equipment. And Marcus's phone records came back. He was reporting to Lazzaro Moretti for 6 months. The name landed like a stone in cold water. Lazzaro Moretti, ambitious, ruthless, and smart enough to be dangerous. Bastian's primary rival for control of the eastern ports. Marcus's punishment of Ilara wasn't random cruelty, Dante continued. It was a test. Moretti wanted to see if you'd react. And boss, you walked out of a dinner with 5 family heads to save her. You executed Marcus in front of witnesses. You moved her into your private wing. He met Bastian's eyes. They know she matters. Bastian's jaw flexed. He'd known the risks. Had taken them anyway. Double the perimeter guard. I want counter-surveillance on anyone watching us. And Dante. Yeah. She stays close. within sight at all times. Dante nodded slowly. You sure that's smart? Keeping her near you makes her a target. Sending her away makes her vulnerable. At least here, I control the battlefield. Bastion stood, rolling his shoulders. Moretti wants a war? He'll get one. Over the following days, Elara discovered exactly what kind of man she'd become entangled with. Bastion brought her into meetings not as decoration, but as his assistant, taking notes, managing schedules. She watched him negotiate a shipping contract with ice-cold precision, then threaten a rival's lieutenant with such casual violence it made her stomach turn. Afterward, in his study, she poured whiskey with shaking hands. You told that man you'd feed him to the harbor if he tried to undercut you again. I will. Bastion accepted the glass, studying her face. Does that frighten you? Yes. She met his eyes. But I understand why it's necessary. In your world. It's not your world, Elara. You don't have to stay in it. Where else would I go? The question came out softer than intended. You saved my life. You gave me a home. She stopped, the confession too dangerous to complete. Bastion set down his glass and stood. 3 steps brought him close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell the expensive cologne mixed with whiskey. His hand rose to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Wanting you could get you killed, he said roughly. Every instinct I have screams to send you somewhere safe, somewhere far from me and the violence that follows me like a shadow. Then why don't you? Because I'm too selfish to let you go. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Because the thought of you out there, unprotected, drives me insane. Because the kiss happened like inevitability. His mouth claimed hers with desperate hunger, one hand tangling in her hair, the other gripping her waist. Elara gasped against him, and he deepened the kiss, swallowing the sound. For perfect seconds, nothing existed except his taste, his touch, the way he held her like she was precious and necessary and entirely his. Then he pulled back abruptly, breathing hard, something agonized in his expression. This is a mistake. Bastion, you should go to your room. Now. She fled before the tears could fall. The next morning, Elara took her usual walk through the gardens. The air was crisp, snow crunching under her boots. She was thinking about Bastion's kiss, the way he looked at her like she was salvation and damnation, when instinct screamed warning. She turned, saw the glint of metal on a distant rooftop. Then Bastion slammed into her from the side. They hit the ground hard as the shot cracked through frozen air. Pain and heat, Bastion's body jerking, blood spreading across his shoulder, but his weight covering her completely. Stay down. His voice was deadly calm despite the wound. Into his radio, Dante, sniper on the north building. Active shooter. Lockdown now. Security swarmed the garden within seconds. Bastion finally let Elara up, his hand immediately checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? You're bleeding. Are you hurt? The question came out savage. No, but you. He pulled her against his chest with his good arm, his blood soaking into her coat. She could feel his heart hammering, feel the tremor in his muscles. When he spoke, his voice was raw. You're not safe here, Elara. You're not safe anywhere while they know you're mine. The explosion shattered Elara's window at 2:47 a.m. She jolted awake as gunfire erupted below, automatic weapons, close, too close. Her door burst open before she could scream. Dante Graves, tactical vest already on, weapon drawn. With me. Now. He grabbed her arm, pulling her into the hallway. More gunfire echoed through the mansion. Shouting in Italian. Return fire from Bastion's security team. The acrid smell of smoke. Bastion is handling it. My job is you. Dante moved with lethal efficiency, checking corners, weapon up. They descended a hidden staircase Elara had never seen, down into darkness broken only by emergency lighting. At the bottom, a reinforced steel door stood open. Inside, The safe room was larger than expected, concrete walls, supplies stacked along one side, a bank of monitors showing security feeds. Inez was already there with 3 other staff members, her face pale but composed. She pulled Alara close the moment she entered. "Thank God," the older woman whispered. Dante sealed the door with multiple locks engaging. On the monitors, Alara watched her nightmare unfold. Men in tactical gear breaching the estate from 3 points. Bastion's security team responding with trained precision. And there, Bastion himself, moving through the chaos with terrible grace, weapon in hand, every shot deliberate and lethal. She'd never seen this version of him. The cold efficiency, the way he cleared rooms like violence, was a language he'd been born speaking. 2 men came at him from opposite sides. He dropped one with a shot to the chest, disarmed the other with brutal hand-to-hand, then put a bullet through his knee before moving on. "He's magnificent, isn't he?" Inez said quietly. "Terrifying, but magnificent." The attack lasted 17 minutes. When the last hostile was either dead or captured, Alara's entire body was shaking. On screen, Bastion stood in the entrance hall, covered in blood, not all his, surveying the damage with emotionless eyes. Then he looked directly at the camera. Directly at her. His expression transformed. Relief and rage and something desperate. He was moving before Alara could process it. The safe room door unsealed. Bastion appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, still armed. His eyes found her immediately, scanned her for injuries with clinical precision. "You're okay?" His voice was rough. Alara nodded, unable to speak. He crossed her in 3 strides, pulled her against him despite the blood, despite the audience. His hand cradled the back of her head. 3 captured alive, Dante reported from the doorway. "Want me to start the interrogation?" "I'll handle it." Bastion released Alara reluctantly. "Keep her here until I clear the house." An hour later, Alara sat in Bastion's study while he paced like a caged predator. Dante leaned against the desk, arms crossed. The interrogation had revealed everything. Moretti's orders were explicit, Bastion said, voice deadly calm. "Breach security, kill anyone in their way, take you alive. Use you as leverage to force my surrender of the eastern ports." He stopped pacing, eyes burning into hers. "You're not collateral damage anymore, Alara. You're the primary target. So, what do we do? I have a safe house in the mountains. Remote, defendable, 24-hour security detail. You go there while I handle Moretti." The pronouncement landed like a sentence. Alara stood, something fierce rising in her chest. "You're sending me away. I'm keeping you alive. By separating us? By making me hide while you fight a war?" "Yes." The single word held finality. "I won't let you make this decision alone." Alara moved closer, refusing to back down despite the intensity rolling off him. "Tell me the real options." "All of them." Bastion's jaw flexed. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then his control cracked. "The real option? I keep you here where I can see you, where I can protect you myself. But that means you're in the middle of a war zone. It means Moretti will keep trying to take you. It means watching you become a target for every rival who wants leverage against me." His voice roughened. "If they take you, Alara, I'll burn this city to ash to get you back. I'll start a war that kills hundreds. But I'd rather send you somewhere safe and live with missing you than risk your death." The confession hung between them, raw, desperate, real. Alara reached up, cupping his scarred face with both hands. "How long?" "However long it takes to end this. Weeks. Maybe a month." She could see what the admission cost him. The man who controlled everything, admitting he couldn't control this. "Okay." Relief and anguish warred in his expression. "Okay. But this isn't goodbye, Bastion." She pulled him down until their foreheads touched. "This is wait for me. You end this war. You make it safe. Then you come for me. Promise me." His arms wrapped around her, crushing her against his chest. "I promise. I will end this. I will come for you." He pulled back just enough to look at her, thumb brushing across her lips. And when I do, Alara, I'm never letting you go again. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now telling me, what country are you watching from? What city? And what time is it where you are? I love knowing where my viewers are around the world. Are you watching this at midnight when you should be sleeping? During your lunch break? Let me know. And while you're down there in the comments, tell me, are you Team Bastion, or do you think Alara should run far away from this dangerous man? Hit that like button if you're invested in their story, and share this with someone who loves intense romance. Now, back to the story. Things are about to get even more dangerous. The safe house sat carved into the mountainside like a secret, all glass and stone and isolation. Alara watched snow fall beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, counting days like a prisoner marking walls. 21 days since Bastion put her on the helicopter. 21 nights falling asleep to the sound of wind through pines instead of his footsteps across the hall. The guards rotated in shifts, professional and invisible. They kept her safe. They kept her alone. Her phone buzzed at exactly 9 p.m., their ritual, maintained across the distance. Bastion's voice came through the encrypted line, rough with exhaustion. Tell me you're okay. I'm okay. Alara curled into the leather chair by the fireplace, closing her eyes to better imagine him. Still safe. Still bored. Still missing you. A pause, heavy with things unsaid. Dante increased the perimeter security. We intercepted chatter about Moretti sending scouts to find you. Did they get close? They're dead. Said with such casual finality it should have frightened her. Instead, she felt protected. Alara, I need you to understand, if anyone finds that location, if there's even a hint of threat, you follow the extraction protocol exactly. No hesitation. I know the plan. They drilled it into her before she left. Multiple escape routes, emergency contacts, procedures for every nightmare scenario. How are things there? She heard him moving, the clink of a glass being poured. Whiskey, probably. The Ethiopian blend she used to make him every morning. I'm building a case against Moretti. Documentation of every territorial violation, every breach of council law. Solomon Cross agreed to call an emergency session. You're going political instead of violent? Something warm bloomed in her chest. Bastion, that's brilliant. It's what you would do. His voice softened slightly. You said I don't have to be the monster they expect. That I could be smarter. You were always smart. You just forgot there are weapons besides bullets. Dante said something similar. That you've changed me. Made me calculate instead of react. A long exhale. He's not wrong. Before you, I would have declared open war. Burned Moretti's operation to the ground and dealt with the council's sanctions later. Now I'm gathering evidence and building alliances like a fucking politician. Alara smiled despite the ache in her chest. Is that a complaint? It's an observation. You've made me want to be better. Less destructive. More strategic. His voice dropped lower. It's terrifying. Why? Because I don't know how to do this, care about someone, need someone. I've spent 10 years believing emotions were weaknesses that get you killed. Then you walked into my life, and suddenly I need you like air. I can't think straight when you're in danger. Can't function properly knowing you're hundreds of miles away. He paused. I don't know how to be this vulnerable and still be the man who runs this empire. Alara's throat tightened. You're more than your empire, Bastion. You're the man who held me while I cried over family photos. Who carried me out of the snow. Who chose strategy over revenge because I asked him to consider it. That man is stronger than any reputation. That man only exists because of you. Then come back to me. She pressed her palm against the cold window glass as if she could reach through the distance. Win this war. Dismantle Moretti. Make it safe. Then come home. I will. The vow carried absolute conviction. The council meets in 3 days. I'll present evidence that even Moretti can't deny. When it's done, when he's sanctioned and stripped of protection, I'm coming for you, Alara. And when I do, I'm never letting you go again. Promise? On everything I am. On everything you've made me want to be. She heard ice clink in his glass. 3 more days. Can you wait 3 more days? I'd wait forever if I had to. The truth of it settled in her bones. But I'd rather not. His low laugh was the best sound she'd heard in 3 weeks. 3 days. Then we end this. After they disconnected, Elara sat watching snowfall, counting hours until Bastion would walk into that council meeting and prove that the monster everyone feared had learned to be something more dangerous, strategic, calculated, and absolutely unwilling to lose what he'd finally allowed himself to love. 2 days later, Dante called. Boss wanted you to know Solomon Cross confirmed the meeting. Tomorrow at noon. Every family head will be there. A pause. He's ready. And Elara? He's fighting for you. Whatever happens in that room, remember that. The next morning, her phone stayed silent. She watched the clock tick toward noon, then past it. 1 p.m. 2. 3. Nothing. Fear crept in, cold and insidious. What if something went wrong? What if Moretti? At 4:17, Bastion's voice finally crackled through. It's done. Relief nearly broke her. What happened? Pack your things. She could hear the smile in his voice. I'm bringing you home. The council chamber was older than any of the men in it, a neutral ground where the 5 families had settled disputes for 3 generations. Solomon Cross sat at the head of the long table, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, flanked by the other family heads. Bastion took his seat with Dante standing behind him. Across the table, Lazzaro Moretti lounged with false confidence, expensive suit immaculate, smile predatory. Bastion Vane has called this emergency session, Solomon began, voice carrying the weight of authority. The floor is yours. Bastion stood, placing a tablet in the center of the table. With a gesture, the wall screens lit up, security footage, financial records, intercepted communications. 3 weeks ago, Lazzaro Moretti orchestrated a coordinated military assault on my private residence during a sanctioned diplomatic dinner. He let that sink in. Article 4 of our founding compact, residential properties are neutral ground. Article 7, civilian staff and family members are not legitimate targets. Article 12, disputes between families must be mediated here before violent action. The footage played armed men breaching the Vane estate, gunfire in sacred halls, the tactical precision of a planned attack. Moretti's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened against the table. Moretti violated all 3 articles, Bastion continued. His men killed 2 of my security personnel and attempted to kidnap a member of my household to use as leverage. He pressed a button. Financial transfers appeared, payments from Moretti's accounts to Marcus, the dead steward. He planted an informant in my home. Used him to orchestrate attempted murder. Then launched a military operation when that failed. She's not family, Moretti interrupted, voice smooth. She's a maid. Your bed warmer, maybe, but not protected under Article 7. She's your weakness, Vane, which makes her a legitimate strategic target. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Bastion. Elara Vance is under my direct protection. Bastion's voice was ice. I publicly claimed her before witnesses from 3 families. She lives in my private wing, manages my legitimate operations, and carries my name's protection. By every definition in our laws, that makes her family. He leaned forward. You all know the law, Lazzaro. Attack someone's family, you attack them. You didn't just violate protocol, you declared war without council approval. Solomon studied the evidence, then looked to the other family heads. Does anyone dispute Vane's interpretation? Silence. Even Moretti's usual allies said nothing. The evidence is clear, Solomon pronounced. Lazzaro, you've been reckless. Attacking a protected household during diplomatic proceedings threatens all our stability. If Vane's residence isn't safe, none of ours are. He looked around the table. Vote. All in favor of finding Moretti in violation. For hands rose. Moretti sat alone. Sanctions are as follows, Solomon continued. immediate withdrawal from all disputed Eastern territories, 5 million in reparations to the Vane family, and delivery of all informants involved in this operation, including communications records. He fixed Moretti with a hard stare. Failure to comply means you're in breach with all 5 families. No one survives that. Moretti's composure finally cracked. This is bullshit. Over some girl. Over law, Bastion cut in quietly. Over order. Over the rules that keep this from being open warfare in the streets. He stood. I'll accept the council's judgment. But Lazaro, when you deliver those informants, they're going to federal prosecution. I'm done keeping your messes quiet. Understanding dawned on Moretti's face. Federal prosecution meant investigations, trials, exposure. His entire operation would unravel under that spotlight. You think this ends it? Moretti hissed. She'll always be your weakness, Vane. Someone will use her against you eventually. Bastion walked around the table until he stood directly over Moretti. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute conviction. No, she's my strength. The difference is, I'll protect her better than you protected your own people. He straightened. Your empire is done, Lazaro. Not because I burned it down, because you were stupid enough to give me the ammunition to dismantle it legally. Outside the chamber, Dante handed Bastion his phone. She's waiting for your call. Bastion dialed. Alara answered before the first ring finished. Bastion? It's done. He allowed himself a smile. Moretti's sanctioned. His operation's collapsing. The informants are being delivered to federal custody. He started walking toward the exit, toward the helicopter waiting to take him to the mountains. Pack your things, Alara. I'm bringing you home. The helicopter descended through afternoon light, and Alara pressed her face to the window like a child. There, the Vane estate rising from snow-covered grounds, gothic and beautiful and home. And there, standing in the cleared landing zone, was Bastion. He wore all black, hands in his coat pockets, dark hair windswept. Even from this distance, she could feel the intensity of his focus. The moment the skids touched down, he was moving. Alara barely got the door open before he reached her. Then his hands were on her waist, lifting her down, pulling her against him with desperate strength. His face buried in her neck, breathing her in like she was oxygen after drowning. You're here, he said roughly. You're really here. I'm here. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the rapid thunder of his heart. It's over. It's over. He pulled back just enough to frame her face with both hands, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones like he was memorizing her features. Moretti's finished. The informants are in federal custody. You're safe. Then he kissed her right there on the helipad with guards watching and snow falling around them. Kissed her like she was salvation and damnation, and everything in between. Alara melted into him, 3 weeks of aching loneliness dissolving under the fierce claim of his mouth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bastion rested his forehead against hers. Welcome home. The household had gathered in the entrance hall, Inez at the front, tears streaming down her weathered face. The moment Alara entered, the older woman pulled her into a crushing embrace. Thank God, Inez whispered. Thank God you're safe. The other staff crowded around, genuine warmth in their greetings, relief in their eyes. They'd worried. They'd missed her. This place had become home in ways that went beyond walls and roof. Bastion let her have her moment, standing back with Dante, watching with something soft in his expression. Then he stepped forward, hand extended. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. He led her through corridors she knew, then through a door she'd never noticed, hidden in the paneling of the library's back wall. Beyond it, a glass-enclosed conservatory stretched toward the gardens. Winter light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. Plants thrived in controlled warmth. A fireplace crackled at the center. It was beautiful and private and clearly his sanctuary. I've never brought anyone here, Bastion said quietly. This is where I come when the Empire gets too heavy. When being the monster everyone expects becomes exhausting. He turned to face her. I want you here. In this space. In my life. Permanently. Ilara's breath caught. Bastion. I built walls to survive. He crossed to her slowly. Convinced myself that isolation meant safety. That feeling nothing was better than risking loss. Then you walked into my world and threw those walls like they were paper. His hands found her waist, pulling her close. You made me want things I thought were impossible. Made me believe I could be more than violence and control. You were always more than that. Ilara reached up, fingers tracing the cross tattoo on his face, the mark everyone saw as threatening, but she learned meant protection. You just needed someone to see it. I was dead inside long before that night in the snow, she continued. Surviving but not living. Going through motions, but feeling nothing. Then you carried me out of the storm, and something woke up. You didn't just save my life, Bastion. You gave me a reason to want one. He made a sound low in his throat, something between relief and hunger. Then his mouth was on hers again, but different this time. Not desperate or claiming, but reverent. Worshipful. Like she was something precious he'd thought he'd lost. Ilara gasped against him, and he deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in her hair, the other splayed possessively across her lower back. She felt him everywhere, his taste, his heat, his absolute focus on her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bastion's eyes were blazing. You're mine, Ilara. Not as property, not as someone under my protection. As my equal. My partner. My everything. Then stop holding back, she whispered, fingers curling into his shirt. I choose this. I choose you. I choose all of it, the danger, the complexity, the impossible beautiful mess of your world. Our world. Something cracked in his expression, the last wall falling. Stay with me. Not as an employee. Not as someone I'm protecting. His voice roughened with emotion. Stay with me as mine. Always, she promised. For as long as you'll have me. Forever, then. He lifted her easily, carrying her toward the leather sofa near the fireplace. Because I'm never letting you go. 6 months transformed everything. Ilara sat across from shipping contractors in Bastion's legitimate corporate offices, negotiating terms with the same steady confidence she'd once used to serve whiskey. The men in expensive suits no longer saw a maid, they saw Bastion Vane's partner, and they treated her accordingly. The Eastern Route timeline is non-negotiable, she said, reviewing contracts with practiced efficiency. But we can discuss the tonnage caps if you're willing to guarantee priority loading. After they left, Bastion appeared in her office doorway, leaning against the frame with barely concealed pride. You just saved us $40,000 in operational costs. I know. She smiled. I learned from the best. The household had transformed too. Staff who'd once seen her as one of them now showed the same deference they gave Bastion, but warmer, more genuine. Inez had fully embraced her role as surrogate mother, appearing with tea and knowing looks whenever Bastion's intensity became too much. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, Inez said one afternoon, watching Bastion through the window as he spoke with Dante. And you look at him like he gave you the stars. He gave me myself back, Ilara corrected. Everything else was bonus. The formal dinner came in late autumn. 5 family heads and their key personnel, the first major gathering since Moretti's fall. Ilara wore emerald silk that made her eyes luminous, and when Bastion introduced her, his hand possessive on her lower back, his voice carried absolute authority. This is Ilara Vance. My partner in every sense of the word. She manages our legitimate operations and has my complete confidence. His eyes swept the room, cold and final. She is under my absolute protection. Any insult to her is an insult to me. Any threat against her is a declaration of war. We're clear. Nods around the table. Solomon Cross raised his glass. To new alliances, then. And to the woman who managed to civilize Bastion Vane. Later, Lazzaro Moretti's successor, a younger cousin, chastened and careful, approached Ilara privately. My family owes you an apology. Lazaro's actions were regrettable. They were attempted murder, Alara corrected mildly. But I appreciate the acknowledgement. By the time winter returned, Alara had become an accepted fixture in Bastion's world. The dangerous men who'd once seen her as weakness now recognized her as strength, the anchor that kept their most volatile ally stable and strategic. The anniversary came on a night of gentle snowfall. Bastion found her in the conservatory, staring out at the gardens. Walk with me. He led her outside, through snow that crunched under their boots, toward the garden wall. The exact spot where he'd found her a year ago. Alara's breath caught as memory crashed back, the cold, the fear, the acceptance that she would die alone. Then his arms carrying her to safety. I found you here broken and freezing, Bastion said quietly, stopping at the wall. Barely alive. Barely a pulse. He turned to face her, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. You saved my life that night, Alara. Just by surviving. Just by being strong enough to hold on until I could find you. Bastion. He dropped to one knee in the snow. Alara's heart stopped. In his hand, a ring blood-red ruby set in platinum, the stone the exact shade of the dress she'd worn that night. Beautiful and fierce and perfect. Marry me. His voice was rough with emotion. Not because I saved you. Not out of gratitude or obligation. Marry me because you saved me. Because I'm a better man with you than I've ever been alone. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Snow fell around them like blessing. Because I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. Yes. The word came out broken, joyful. Yes, of course yes. He stood, sliding the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. Their kiss tasted like snowflakes and promises, fierce and tender and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bastion pressed his forehead to hers. 1 year ago, I thought I'd lost you before I even knew I needed you. 1 year ago, I was dying alone in the snow. Alara touched his face, tracing the cross tattoo with gentle fingers. Now I'm choosing life. Choosing you. Choosing forever. They stood in the falling snow, in the exact spot where her nightmare had begun, and made it something beautiful. A promise instead of a grave. A beginning instead of an ending. Inez watched from the conservatory windows, tears streaming down her face, smiling like she'd known all along how the story would end. With the monster and the maid finding their way through darkness to each other. With love that wasn't gentle but fierce, the kind that didn't save you from the shadows, but became the light that helped you survive them together. Forever, Bastion whispered against Alara's lips. Forever, she agreed. And in the warmth of his arms, with snow falling like grace around them, Alara knew with absolute certainty she was finally completely home. And there you have it, Bastion and Alara's complete journey from that terrifying night in the snow to their happily ever after. If this story gave you all the feels, show some love by hitting that like button. Share this with your friends who love dark romance and protective alpha heroes. Now, I want to hear from you. One more time, drop a comment telling me, what country and city are you watching from, and what time is it right there? I love connecting with viewers from all over the world. Also, tell me, did you love the story? What was your favorite moment? Was it when Bastion carried Alara from the snow? The council scene? Or that final proposal in the falling snow? And most importantly, if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I post new romantic stories regularly, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep believing in love that's fierce enough to survive anything. See you in the next story.